Welcome to the Moon and Gemini podcast. I am your witch in residence, April Edwards. This is our deep dive into Mercury retrograde in Cancer, returning to the story beneath the story, June 29th through the 23rd, 26. On June 29th, Mercury stationed retrograde in Cancer. And yes, this can bring the familiar Mercury retrograde themes, delayed messages, changed plans, technology issues, and confusion around timing. But that is not the deepest story here. Mercury retrograde in Cancer asks us to revisit the emotional language through which we understand our lives. Cancer is the sign of home, family, memory, ancestry, care, protection, belonging, and emotional safety. When Mercury moves backward here, the mind does not simply review facts. It returns to feeling. It returns to the rooms where we learned what safety meant. It returns to old conversations, family narratives, childhood impressions, and the words that were spoken, as well as the words that were never spoken at all. This retrograde does not only ask what happened. It asks, what did I learn to believe because of what happened? What role did I take on? What need did I learn to hide? What story about love, belonging, care, protection still lives within me? Mercury governs communication, thought, language, perception, learning, movement, and the way we organize reality. It rules the stories we tell ourselves, the names we give things, and the mental pathways we use to make meaning. When Mercury turns retrograde, that process becomes reflective. The mind doubles back. We review, reconsider, revise, retrieve, and reconnect. A retrograde does not mean Mercury stops working. It means Mercury's work changes direction. Instead of gathering new information, we may need to return to something we did not fully understand the first time. Instead of pushing the conversation forward, we may need to hear what was underneath it. Instead of moving quickly into the next chapter, we may need to understand what has been carried from the past into the present. And this retrograde is happening in Cancer, what returns may not arrive as a clear thought. It may arrive as a feeling, a mood, a memory, a body response. Cancer remembers. The nervous system remembers. The household remembers. You may not consciously remember every detail of an early experience, but you may still organize your life around the emotional conclusion you drew from it. During Mercury retrograde in Cancer, the mind enters this emotional archive. And one of the most important things to understand is this: memory is not a recording. Memory is interpretive. It changes as we change. We may remember something differently once we have more information. We may understand a parent differently once we reach the age they were when something happened. We may recognize that what once felt like rejection was someone else's limitation. Or we may finally admit that something we minimized had a much deeper effect than we allowed ourselves to acknowledge. Mercury retrograde in Cancer does not ask us to treat every memory as objective fact. It asks us to become curious about the emotional truth carried inside the memory. What did this experience mean to the person you were then? What conclusion did you draw? Is that conclusion still shaping your life now? The goal is not to prosecute the past. The goal is to understand its ongoing influence. This station also occurs on the same day as the full moon in Capricorn, which makes this symbolism even sharper. The Capricorn full moon reveals structures, responsibilities, roles, and burdens. Mercury retrograde in Cancer asks where those structures came from. Why did you become responsible for this? Who taught you that your needs should come second? What happened when you expressed vulnerability? The full moon reveals what has been built. Mercury retrograde returns to the emotional blueprint. And this brings us to one of Cancer's great themes: the stories families tell. Every family has stories. Stories about where it came from, who sacrificed, who failed, who succeeded, who was difficult, Who held everyone together? Who was never mentioned? Some stories are spoken openly. Others are communicated through silence. A family may say, "We are strong," but what it may mean is, "We do not ask for help." A family may say, "We take care of each other," but what it may mean is, "Your needs belong to the group before they belong to you." Mercury retrograde in Cancer may reveal the difference between the stated family story and the lived emotional reality. It may become possible to see what role assigned long ago is still shaping present relationships: the mediator, the achiever, the caretaker, the invisible child, the one who leaves, the one who remains, and the one who carries everyone's fear. This retrograde asks whether that role still belongs to you. It also asks us to become more precise with emotional language. Many people use accusation where feelings should be named. "You never listen to me" may contain, "I feel unimportant when I'm interrupted." "I'm fine" may contain, "I do not trust what will happen if I tell the truth." Mercury in Cancer can become protective when vulnerability feels unsafe. It may communicate indirectly to avoid the risk of direct request. But indirect communication often creates the very insecurity it is trying to prevent. The other person is asked to interpret, to anticipate, to prove care by correctly identifying what was never stated. During this retrograde, pay attention to where you expect others to understand without being told. There is a difference between emotional intuition and mind reading. Care does not remove the need for language. At the same time, this retrograde may improve our ability to listen beneath the words, not by inventing motives, but by noticing context. What emotion is making this conversation difficult? What need is being defended? What history has entered the room? What does the body do when this subject appears? Sometimes the argument about logistics is really about feeling excluded. The argument about money is about security. The argument about a delayed message is about abandonment. Mercury in Cancer helps us identify the submerged issue. But listening beneath the words does not mean excusing harm, accepting manipulation, or abandoning boundaries. It means responding to the actual conversation, not only its surfaced form. Cancer also governs home. During this retrograde, practical matters involving home may need revision. Repairs may return, moving plans may change, old documents may need review, family members may reconnect. But home is more than just a place. Home is the environment where the nervous system expects to lower its guard. This retrograde may ask whether your home supports the person you are now, or whether it is still organized around an older version of your life. It may also identify nostalgia. Old music, photographs, recipes, relationships, and memories may feel especially potent. Nostalgia can restore continuity, but nostalgia also edits. It may preserve warmth while removing cost. It may make a former relationship appear safer than it actually was. It may encourage us to return to something familiar simply because the present feels uncertain. The fact that something returns does not mean it should remain. This applies to old relationships as well. An old friend may reach out, a former partner may appear, a family member may reopen communication. You may find yourself thinking about someone you have not spoken to in years. This is not automatically fate. Retrogrades bring review. A person may return so the relationship can be understood from a new perspective. There may be something to repair, something to say, something to forgive, something to refuse, or simply something to recognize. Ask what is different now. Has the underlying pattern changed? Are you responding to the person in front of you, or are you responding to the emotional comfort of familiarity? Does the return create greater honesty, or does it invite you back into a role you have outgrown? Another important theme of this retrograde is the difference between care and control. Cancer protects, but protection can become control when fear takes over. A person may insist that they are caring while removing another person's agency. They may give the advice that was not requested, monitor decisions, use worry as justification for intrusion, make others responsible for easing their anxiety. Mercury retrograde in Cancer may reveal where care and control have become confused. Are you helping because help is wanted, or because another person's uncertainty is difficult for you to tolerate? Are you protecting someone, or protecting yourself from the discomfort of allowing them to choose? This retrograde may also reveal where someone else's care has become a form of control in your life. Gratitude does not require surrendering autonomy. Support should strengthen a person's ability to live. It should not make freedom feel like betrayal. Cancer is symbolized by the crab, tenderness inside, protection outside. So when Mercury retrogrades here, communication may become more defensive. People may respond to tone more than content. A simple question may be heard as criticism. A boundary may be interpreted as withdrawal. A delay may feel like rejection. When you feel the shell closing, pause. Ask whether the present conversation is truly unsafe or whether it resembles an older one. Defensiveness is information. It tells us something feels threatened. But it does not always tell us what the threat actually is. Silence also matters during retrograde. Silence can be protective, reflective, and sacred, but silence can also punish, avoid, control, or withhold. Notice how silence is being used. Are you becoming quiet because you need time, or because you want the other person to feel your withdrawal? Because Cancer is connected with lineage, this retrograde may also bring ancestral stories into focus. You may learn something about your family history. You may recognize a repeated pattern. You may understand more clearly where certain fears began. Themes around migration, caregiving, housing, poverty, silence, emotional availability, and survival may become more visible. Ancestral awareness should not be used to romanticize suffering. And recognizing an inherent pattern does not mean you are doomed to repeat it. It gives context. A strategy that feels irrational in the present may once have protected someone. A family silence may have begun during a time when speaking carried danger. Understanding the origin creates choice. You can honor what helped your people survive without preserving every survival strategy forever. On a practical level, the emotional work does not remove the usual Mercury retrograde guidance. Confirm travel arrangements. Review contracts. Back up important files. Allow extra time for delays. Put significant agreements in writing. But do not become superstitious. Life does not stop because Mercury is retrograde. You may still sign a contract, move home, begin a project if circumstances require it. The point is not avoidance. The point is review. Read carefully. Ask questions. Build flexibility into the plan. The deepest work of this retrograde is learning how to return without becoming trapped. Return to a memory without surrendering to its original conclusion. Return to family without accepting the old role. Return to the former version of yourself with compassion rather than embarrassment. The past does not disappear because we understand it, but understanding changes our relationship with it. What was once an invisible instruction becomes a conscious choice. When Mercury stations retrograde, the emotional material may not be fully resolved, but language may begin moving forward again. Mercury retrograde in Cancer returns us to the rooms where our emotional language was first formed, to the stories that taught us what love required, what belonging costs, what could be said, what had to remain hidden. Some of what returns will be tender, some will be inconvenient, some may feel deeply familiar, but familiarity is not destiny. The purpose of returning is not always to restore the past. Sometimes we return because we are fully capable of witnessing it without becoming contained by it. This retrograde asks us to listen beneath the sentence, to recognize the memory inside the reaction, to become more honest about need, to separate care from control, to let home become a living relationship rather than a fixed location in the past. You are allowed to remember without reenacting. You are allowed to revise the family story. You are allowed to speak with a voice that did not exist when the original wound occurred. You are allowed to let what returns become evidence of how far you have traveled, not an instruction to go backwards. This work grows through word of mouth. If it's been meaningful to you, you can like, share, or subscribe. That's how it reaches the ones who need it.